I want to enter Golden Demon again, but first I gotta get better at a lot of things. Chief among them, painting faces. And perhaps this 3D scanner, perfect for scanning faces, can help with that. Hey guys, Jay here, welcome to Eons of Battle. I want to know if face scans 3D printed will look good on miniatures. You would think so, but I'm not convinced. Hasbro has been doing something similar with their Black Series action figures. They've been a little hush-hush on the exact technology that goes into making their accurate replicas of actors' faces, but it's probably something along the lines of this. And it does make for perfect copies of actors' heads. But once it's been scaled down, turned into plastic and painted, Don't get me wrong, it looks great. A lot better than any of the toys I had growing up, but there's still something not right. It's 2 steps forward and 1 step back in my opinion. It takes artistry to make something look right, and if it doesn't quite work for action figures, perhaps it'll be a little awkward for miniature painting as well. Everything looks right in the movie and the cartoons because the movie had a director, cinematographer, lighting, and makeup to make things look just right, and the comic artist used color, shape, and form to get things to feel correct. The toy is perfectly factually correct, but sitting there on the shelves at Target, it's a little uncanny. I have my doubts. On the other hand, maybe the same 3D scanning process, but rendering the color through mini painting will be the best of both worlds. A perfect head replica combined with hours of delicate painting will create something magical. I think it's worth a try, and if nothing else, it'll help me along on my Golden Demon journey. First things first though, is this scanner even up to the challenge? This is the Revopoint Pop 2 scanner. Its claim to fame is its higher precision projector and IR camera, which allows for a 10 frames per second scanning speed to capture quick details. This means that you're creating 3 million points a second. All those points allow for a higher quality mesh. This scanner is great for scanning larger objects to create replicas, rebuild broken pieces of an object, or modify existing designs. The Pop 2 can also scan in color, so you can take an object, get the 3D model and the material data, which can be helpful for quality replicas. Many scanners have difficult software, but RevoScan makes it simple. To scan our heads, all we had to do was set the accuracy to high, put the scan mode on head, and we decided to try the color scan on Nick. You can slowly walk around the object or use the included turntable to capture 360 degrees of smaller objects. After your scan is complete, you can choose to export to PLY, OBJ, or STL so you can work in your favorite 3D modeling software. If you're looking for even more precision, they have the Revopoint Mini, which uses a blue light scanner that can scan smaller objects, but it isn't recommended for faces. We had a previous video taking a look at that scanner. A special thanks to Revopoint for sending the Pop 2, and if you're looking to pick one up, there's a link in the description. Wow, that's not bad. Yeah. It's all there. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it looks pretty good.
Yeah, I think the obvious thing to do is to put our faces on Warhammer models.
Yeah,
I want to be a Space Marine.
I want to be an Orc.
That's gonna be
awesome.
That's gonna be really funny. So I assume the next step is you take this file, export it as STL, and it's ready to rock?
My head came out fine, except for the overlapping mesh. I don't think this was the scanner's fault as much as it was my fault for not being able to hold my Orc face. But it's easy enough to fix in Blender by deleting unwanted points and using the make manifold to fill in the missing data. Although I did have to add to the mesh and smooth it out to make my face look correct. Next was working on the scale of my head. I measured the knob head and created an object about the same size to roughly check the size of my head. Orc knobs have quite the weird neck. I measured that part and created an object to act as my new neck. With it in place, it's time to remove my shoulders and real neck to be a hunched over orc as I've always wanted to be. I made a manifold one more time to fill in my neck holes, and it was time to cut out my orc neck. With the Boolean modifier set to difference, I was ready to be printed. My head got to join Jay's, and I got to try out the LA Saturn AK printer. LA was nice enough to send us to see how high of quality we could get these prints.
Now what is interesting is that these heads are perfect, but is that the move? Games Workshop, when they make faces, they go hard on the details, making cheeks super shrunken, eyes bulging, and foreheads look tumorous to make those details pop and easy to paint. So will the relatively smooth perfection of these scans' heads create a challenge? I don't know. I want to enter Golden Demon again. I don't know if I can win. I don't know if I have it in me to spend hundreds and hundreds of hours on a single piece, but I want to try. And one of the categories for Golden Demon is Duel, where the judges are looking for a dynamic pairing of 2 well-matched adversaries in some kind of a combat or other exciting situation. And I have a little me and a little Nick. That should be the perfect combination for a good duel. Nick scaled down my head perfectly to fit a Primaris Space Marine. Of course, I have to be a Black Templar Space Marine, but to spice it up a little, I made a Templar who is currently serving in the Death Watch. I took an Intercessor and an Infiltrator and kit bashed them together to make this diorama a little more interesting. Nick wanted to be a knob, which is perfect. I was tempted to stick him onto the horrible boy knob, but I suppose for Golden Demon, a more fitting adversary would be a proper knob with a big old power claw to give him a fighting chance. This is the weirdest thing I've ever done. This is really weird to have us staring back at me from the miniatures. To get this to fit into the dual category, I think I've already broken some of the rules, but they need to be Games Workshop miniatures. They need to fit into the world of Warhammer 40,000, which I'm not quite sure if these models do. But also, kind of the unspoken rule of Golden Demon is your entry also must have a wow factor. And these models definitely have a wow factor to me, but I don't know if they fit in perfectly with Golden Demon. And that's fine because I'm not actually entering these pieces. I'm going to use this as a learning opportunity so that I can kind of get the juices flowing, the Golden Demon juices flowing, if you will. To properly shower myself in golden juices, I need a cool base, so I broke out the wood chips. I usually am looking for tiny pieces that I can glue onto a base, but here I need the biggest pieces possible to fit both of us on. I made me standing taller than Nick, as obviously I am the hero of this piece. I cut up my wood and stuck it together with some thick white hot glue. The natural wood chips will create better, more random looking rocks and cliffs than I could ever sculpt. And when I really want to compete, I would make or find a proper plinth to mount this piece on, but for practice, this 60mm base will work fine. But you know what's always ready to compete? That's right, our Patreon. Over there we have brand new miniatures every month, both miniature and terrain, ready to populate your wargaming tables. When you sign up, there's a welcome pack that includes Dawn of War Space Marine, Imperial Guard, and Eldar terrain, all hosted by Comics, Games, and Things. There's also exclusive videos where we critique our patrons' miniatures and weekly Discord hangouts. We also have merch, link in the description. I love using natural materials, but they do make a mess. I used Milliput to hide any of the exposed hot glue and to smooth out anything that looked a little too wood chippy. Then I pinned the unpainted minis to the wood. I don't usually pin, but for competition you have to work in sub-assemblies to be able to reach all those tricky spots. Yes! This is starting to feel like a Golden Demon entry. The presence of the models, the organization of the elements, it is all coming together. Somewhat accidentally, I have some power lines going on with this sculpture. Not electrical ones, but thematic ones. I've got the angle of this base, and then it's reinforced again by the angle of this bolter going into this ugly orc head, and I even have it going on a little bit with the antenna. These are the sort of things that your brain notices, but the viewer doesn't necessarily notice, but it all works together to reinforce the storytelling of the display. Now it was time to paint. I primed the models black. I always prime in black. I just find it much easier to work dark to light instead of light to dark. And I did a Zenithal prime. Usually the Zenithal is step 1 of contrast paint or washes and glazes, but here I am doing it just for the information that it gives me on lighting, as I intend to paint these models with only a brush. However, on the base, it's Airbrush City. I sprayed some tan everywhere to brighten up the base a lot so that when I apply my inks, it darkens to exactly where I want it. I put some burnt umber and some Indian yellow to make a nice natural looking stone texture. I put the models back on the base and it looks pretty good. For me and my black armor, I decided I would try and use purple to highlight black. I put on dozens and dozens of layers of purple. My logic was that to make interesting black, I can't just use black and gray, as our brains tend to ignore those colors. But purple and blue and black, that might be something that catches the eye. I edge highlighted everything. I never do this on my gaming minis, but for a competition piece, you gotta. Then I use black to darken every piece of armor. I want at least 80% of this model to be pure black, so that my purple and blue look like the light glinting off the black armor instead of purple armor and shadow. Then I freehanded the Templar symbol onto my shoulders and knee, and this taught me that when I do this for real, I'll paint 5 shoulders off the model and pick the best, instead of YOLOing the one already glued on. To paint Nick, it was much simpler. Orcs are more colorful, so I glazed a watery color over each part of the model. I think orcs are actually a really good pick for competition pieces because they have so much stuff. Orcs have a simplicity to their ramshackle nature. Details are just bolted on instead of integrated, which makes them easier to pick out and paint, especially on their weapons. I spent a long time perfectly blending on some highlights to his power claw, and orcs are covered in details like this. I'm having a great time pouring tons and tons and tons of hours into this piece. I can totally see why Golden Demons take 100+ hours, because when you are making a concerted effort to paint every single detail on a Games Workshop miniature, you realize just how many details there actually are. And no washes, no dry brushing, no contrast paint, just good old-fashioned work. It takes some time. With that said, I'm almost done though. I took the colors I used on Nick and I and splashed these onto the base to help integrate the models better. This way it's like a photo. All the colors are present all over everything. And finally, no base is complete without a couple of tufts. I stuck them down here and there to make this base feel more natural. I can't put it off any longer. It is finally time to tackle those faces. I can't wait to see how this goes. They kind of look okay now, we'll see. And I actually do have all the reference material I will ever need. I started painting me by glazing the rough approximation of my skin tone. Not much zenithal landed on me, so I don't want to push the highlights too far. One thing I did find, especially on areas that needed like 50 coats of paint, was the paint would start to build up and become shiny and make it hard to put on more layers. So perhaps pausing and matte varnishing would be the thing to do when I'm trying to achieve perfection. I glued me down to myself, and boy did it look weird. Nick's turn. I started with a close approximation of Nick's skin color, green, and because his face was blasted with the zenithal, I knew he could really push the highlights on his face, so I mixed lime green and yellow together and began doing highlights. I had to be careful and try to follow my reference and not just do classic Games Workshop face painting. Shallow cheeks, brick forehead, I had to actually try. On his hair, I actually color matched it to his real hair. This made his face look a little more recognizable and made the model a million times funnier looking. I permanently attached the models to the base and it was done. This is easily the weirdest thing I have ever painted, but it was a lot of fun and it totally got the juices flowing for Golden Demon. Before, when I was just looking at the projects and looking at them behind the beautiful glass shelf, I felt like I got it, like yeah, they just painted really, really good. But when you're painting for display and for competition, it feels really, really different, and I definitely started to understand that painting up this piece. This right here is probably only about 14 hours of work, and I think it's not bad. I think if I put this in Golden Demon, I'd have a fair shot at one of those little finalist pins. But to take this and actually have a shot at winning a Golden Demon, I totally see the steps involved. Every single thing on this has some flaw or little problem that I could fix, and I could fix if I went and spent hours and hours and hours. The first thing I painted was his little arm, and I painted that little arm for an hour. And I still think that there's tons of things that I could go back and fix and change. But it's also kind of fun. Usually, for me, the biggest satisfaction with painting miniatures is seeing my squad finished and getting to think, ooh, I'm gonna get to play with that in Warcry, I'm gonna get to play with that in Kill Team, I'm gonna get to play with that in Age of Sigmar. But for a piece like this, a lot of the satisfaction actually comes from just painting and achieving the thing that's in your head. And so I am really, really pumped to actually paint something for Golden Demon and to really try and to see exactly what I've got. This piece is weird. There's me and there's Nick. I wonder what Nick would think about it.
Ha! I look like the Hulk.
Now, as amazing as all this is, keep in mind that this scanner is aimed at hardcore techies. It can do the job and it can do it well, but it has some idiosyncrasies. You're gonna have to futz with it. Nick scanned pretty good, but to get me and my black hair to scan, we had to do this. This isn't the scanner being racist, but rather just the realities of a system that measures the amount of light reflecting off of surfaces. You can find more information on the Pop 2 linked in the description below. I am very happy with how this piece turned out, and our weird little faces just stuck there in the plastic. I think maybe I will spend a few more hours and perfect this piece. Or maybe I really should get a move on with my Golden Demon entries. I'm not doing just one, I want a whole bundle, so thanks for watching.